It's all you.
All right, I'm gonna get my screen share going on. Uh, does that look okay? Is everyone seeing the picture? Okay. All right. So on the edge, managing risk and reaching the summit. When I was 15 years old, I received a call from my parents that would forever change my life. I got a call. I grew up in Minnesota, so I was at a party with some friends late night, and my parents told me that my half brother, Martin, had been killed in an avalanche in Big Cottonwood Canyon. And Martin was a big inspiration in my life and in inspiring me to become a mountain athlete. He taught me how to rock climb. We'd go backpacking every summer. And seeing the devastation of this, it really changed my life. My family and I traveled to Utah and we went to the site where he had been buried, and his body was extracted from a hole about 10 feet deep. I'll never forget the sight of his hands at his memorial service, and um, I'll never forget kind of being the oldest child and seeing my parents going through that pain of losing a child. So for my family, it was just, and for me, it was a transformative time of my life. And so he really inspired me to become a professional athlete. And even though I had, so in backcountry skiing and mountaineering and what I do, there's this expected thing that happens with risk. People start off very risky early on, then they have a near miss, then they get more cautious. And because of my experience losing my half brother to an avalanche, I'm the exact opposite. And so when I was after his death, my family moved to Utah from Minnesota, and I began to pursue my career as a professional athlete. And for the last almost 2 decades, I've been having a career doing this incredibly high risk profession. It's very niche, very untraditional. And I've been on the cover of Powder, backcountry magazines. I've climbed. So, with ski mountaineering, with what I do, we climb up the mountain using our own human power and then we ski down. And so, I use techniques from alpine climbing, ice climbing. Then there's the avalanche factor, there's the endurance factor, and then there's the group dynamics. So, there's just a lot of different things going on. And so to get up the mountain, we put these little things, they're almost like carpet, sticky things on the bottom of our skis. And we have special bindings and boots that let us walk uphill. So we skin, we call it, and make these skin tracks up the mountain. And then when it gets too steep, we put our skis on our back and we climb up on foot, sometimes using crampons. And then we ski down. So I really built my career here in the Wasatch in Utah, and then I took it to some of the bigger mountains of the world. And so I'd love to hear where's everyone tuning in from today. If you want to share in the chat, it would be great to hear. And also, if you want to share your favorite thing to do outside. So yeah, so we climb up and then we ski down. And so we're able to ski when the conditions are right. We're able to ski some really steep, and it seems unbelievable how steep we can when the snow's right. A lot of it is just waiting for the right conditions. And so yeah, this is my passion. It's something that I always wanted to do from when I was a little kid. But a lot of my mentors, my half brother, a lot of the people who um, a lot of the other professionals in my career have died doing what I do. And so there's this huge element of risk in this, and it's incredibly dangerous. So I'm really excited to be here with you today to share some of the parallels of managing risk in the mountains with what you're doing in the business arena. And so, after taking my skills in the Wasatch and then building them on other mountains, I was able to successfully go. I went to the Himalayas for my first trip in 2018, and my partner and I climbed Mount Choyu, which is the sixth highest peak in the world. And on the summit, I proposed to my now husband, got down on one knee. So, this is our summit at 27,000 feet. And in the back behind me is Mount Everest, the tallest peak behind my skis on the right. And in a few months after this trip, we went back. Oh, this is a shot of skiing down Mount Choyu. So skiing at 27,000 feet, variable conditions, but it was a lifelong goal and something I had been dreaming about for my entire life. And then in May 2019, I went to back to the Himalayas to climb Mount Everest or Chomolungma, and we climbed from Tibet. Actually, I see someone is originally from Nepal, and so we summited from the north side and climbed from Tibet. And on May 24th, we successfully reached the summit of Mount Everest or Chomolungma. This is like a whole nother keynote that I have. I think I talked about it a little bit in my other talk I did with you before, but Lisa is also going to be following up with a short film about this trip that I did. So stay tuned for that after this presentation. And so, yeah, I make my living as a full-time professional skier, working with a variety of different brands. I'm really conscientious about the brands that I work with. I want to make sure that they are committed to social and environmental responsibility and are using business as a tool to create solutions to the environmental crisis. Yeah, like forging this very untraditional path. I also am really conscientious about the company values of the brands I work with. So I want to be with brands that are in it for the long haul, that have kind of a family style relationship. So Patagonia and Cliff Bar and Lakey are two of my longest standing sponsors, and I've been an athlete for them for over a decade. So it's pretty cool. And yeah, thanks for those of you who have shared where you're from. Oh, is the audio level okay? Someone says Caroline's mic is very soft. I can turn up my audio level. Is everybody hearing me okay? Let me try to turn that up. It's too quiet. Someone says hearing okay.
Yeah, he said it was slightly quiet, but I think it's getting better, but
I can turn it up. Hold on one sec. And I can also bring it closer. Hey, how's that everybody? Thumbs up. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, keep me posted. I have a external mic here, so want to get those levels right. Okay, I'd love to hear what companies you all are from. So if you feel comfortable sharing that in the chat, it would be great to hear. Okay, so let's go back to now we have the audio. So I grew up in Minnesota in the frozen flatlands, and this really shaped my love and tolerance for cold. I remember some days it was like negative 40 degrees, and I'd walk to school, and I would take these trips out west with my family. And twice a year, I would just see the beauty of the mountains, and they really spoke to me on a deep level. And I think living here in the Wasatch, in Salt Lake and Park City, we just have these amazing skyline views. So I always dreamed about climbing and skiing all these peaks. And I grew up also with three brothers, and being the third out of four kids, that gave me a lot of experience that has helped me in my career as well, because in the ski industry, it's very male dominated, especially in leadership positions. And so learning how to, work with a lot of masculine energy with my brothers, it's a skill that has helped me a lot in what I'm doing now. And so, yeah, these experiences coming out west to be with, and when I was 10 to 15, I would go backpacking every summer with my dad and my brothers and my older half brother. And we'd go to the Sawtooths and the Wind River Range. And even though sometimes these trips, they were like type 2 fun, you weren't always having fun while you were doing them, they became my most memorable childhood experiences. And they really set my intention, and it was a place where I just dreamed about trying to climb and ski all these big mountains. And yeah, became really close to my half brother, and it was really difficult then when he was killed in an avalanche. Okay, I'm looking at here. We have We have folks from all over. We have Republic Services, recycling and construction debris. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Department of Public Safety, Stacy. Awesome. Highway Safety Patrol. Great. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, we have a ski patrol. Hey, Marissa. And Candy, Care Now, Urgent and Occupational Care Healthcare Facility. Allison, Lights. Let's see, Light Industrial and Call Center Staffing Agency in Utah. And someone who's originally from Chicago. I love Chicago, being from the Midwest. So it's super cool to hear where everyone's tuning in from. Thank you so much for joining. So going back, the mountaineering, going backpacking with my half brother, seeing the pain of losing my brother. And so in backcountry skiing and mountaineering, when most people are getting into it, it's all fun and games at the beginning. They start off early. Backcountry skiers generally start off early in their careers, taking huge risks. Then they have a close call or maybe even have a fatality. Then they start to make more conservative decisions. And when I was 15 and I lost my half brother to an avalanche, I had never set foot in the backcountry. I didn't grow up skiing professionally or doing this as a professional. It was something I did on vacation with my family. And I felt the hurt first before I'd ever had any fun skiing in avalanche terrain. And so this life-changing experience set the tone for how I would approach risk management for the next part of my career. My strategy is I can't die or get hurt because I can't put my parents and my family through the pain of losing another loved one. And so my call to action to you as fellow risk takers, whether you're on the mountain or in a business setting, is to navigate risky situations with transparency, openness, and communication. And I urge you to be vulnerable, to make yourself exposed, and to put it all out there. So transparency, it's the lack of hidden agendas or conditions accompanied by the availability of full information required for collaboration, cooperation, and collective decision-making. Openness, it's the lack of secrecy or concealment. Frankness, a freedom to express views and ideas, regardless of rank or seniority. And that part about regardless of rank or seniority is really important because one of the things we see when we study backcountry accidents is that oftentimes the less experienced people had a feeling or an intuition, but they didn't speak up because they felt like the expert there had the decision under control. And so I urge you in your organizations and groups, no matter what your rank or seniority, if you feel something is off, or if you have a concern, to always speak up. And finally, the communication piece. It's the successful conveying or sharing of ideas and feelings. And it's a means of connection between people or places. And when we're climbing some of these big mountains, we are connected by rope. And so our lives are literally on each other's. The lives are on the line. So maintaining that connection and the communication is vital. Recently, we added radios to our kit on a regular basis, and that has helped so much with mountain communication. But it's always a struggle. It's always something we're working to improve. And again, make yourself vulnerable. So be willing to put everything out on the table and don't hold anything back. I think we make the best decisions when we let down our walls, our emotional walls, and we really let people in to it and express our innermost fears and desires in the teamwork. And so I'm excited. I'm going to share some stories from mountains that I've climbed along the way to get to the Himalayas. I'm not the Everest talk is another talk, but these are some of the building blocks that I learned to get there. And so one of the first things that I always do when I'm approaching a big mountain climb or new objective is I visualize the worst case scenario. And this is a really weird place to start. Most climbers and skiers don't start their planning by envisioning the worst case scenario, but I do. I look at the route, I think through everything, and I think through all the graphic and horrifying ways I could die on a mountain. And then I address those concerns with my team or with myself. Because for me, just trying to bury those fears, it doesn't make them go away. They actually get louder for me if I try to do that. So for the last couple of years, or for the last really decade and a half, I've been a member of the American Alpine Club. And they compile a book every year called Accidents in North American Mountaineering. So I read this book and I do what I can along the way to learn from the accidents of others. And I think the aviation industry has also done a really good job of publishing these kinds of reports so that other pilots can learn. And so in your work, I really urge you to be willing to talk and write about your near misses and failures. You know, those moments that we're so embarrassed or deeply ashamed of. When we can own those moments and share them with others, we can really create a powerful environment, not only to reclaim our personal power, but to help others get stronger and better in their positions. And so one of my dream lines, I think for a lot of skiers, it's Mount Rainier is, generally the volcanoes of the Pacific Northwest. Those are dream lines, but especially Mount Rainier. It's a crown jewel for ski mountaineers. And it was a big goal of mine for many years. And so I was able to kind of apply this, visualizing the worst case scenario and managing the risk with transparency, openness, and communication when I went to climb this mountain. My dream was to climb Mount Rainier in a single day. It's something that normally takes teams 2 to 3 or 4 days to do, and I wanted to do it in a single day. And the route I wanted to do it on is the Führer Finger, which you can see on this picture here. So it's about 10,000 feet of skiing. And I knew from reading that book, Accidents in North American Mountaineering, that many people fall into crevasses the time of year we were going to ski it. So in mid-June, I had a work trip in Seattle. And one of the things with Rainier is you really need good weather. So while I was planning this work trip, I was also monitoring the weather, and I saw that we had this unbelievably clear weather window coming up at the end of my trip. So I packed my ski stuff along, and I had no partners or no plan, but I threw it in just in case I could find someone. And along the way, I was studying the hazards of the route, looking at it on Google Earth. And then I put something out on social media, an open invite, and I was betting a few people that could do it in a day in the style I wanted to do it, asking all the hard questions up front. So studying the route, finding the partners, assembling the team, going through all this stuff with a fine-tooth comb, and thinking about where we'd be exposed to rockfall, icefall, avalanches, crevasses. So really thinking through the details of every transition. So we got to the trailhead the night before, and we slept for just a couple hours. And then we woke up at 10:30 p.m. to start our ascent up the mountain. And this was like all in our time plan that we had made together. I was able to find a team of 4 other individuals, 2 teams of 2. Some of them I knew and I had been in the mountains with before, but some I hadn't. And I was really excited because this was something I'd been wanting to do for so long. So this was first light after climbing all through the night. Part of the reason I put the team together, we had one of the people had done the route a few times before, so he was able to really help us navigate through the lower part of the glacier in the dark. And then I think one of the things that I'm always trying to fight in the mountains, this is a big human trap, because we have these external factors, but when you look at accidents, a lot of the mistakes come from managing the human factors. And so I'm always trying to fight groupthink. And one of the ways I did that is just like being okay to go against the grain. I decided, since I knew that we were going to be encountering a crevassed section of the glacier where there's potentially these holes where you could fall into, I decided to wear my harness and helmet right from the car. And just a lot of little things, but being willing to go against the grain is really important. So then up here we had this delicate snow bridge crossing across this crevasse, and this is the upper mountain. So we're approaching 14,000 feet. So we're really beginning to feel some of the effects of altitude and exposure as we've been out for many hours. I also wanted to encourage you as I go along the talk, if you have questions that come up, please throw them in the chat. And so we can answer those as soon as I'm done with the presentation. And finally, we reached the summit of Mount Rainier, a huge goal. We're at 14,411 feet. And it looks like we're going to have great conditions. We have some moments for some high fives, and then it's time to ski down. It was one of the best ski descents of my life. And so in the spring, we're just always monitoring those conditions. And we had 10,000 vertical feet. That's about almost 4 snowbird trams stacked on top of each other. And we were able to ski from the summit all the way to the parking lot. And it really all came down to the teamwork. Again, most climbers plan, but their starting point isn't visualizing the worst case. Doing that ahead of time and during and navigating the situation with transparency, openness, and communication, we were able to accomplish something that many said was impossible. Climbing and skiing this big mountain, this route that normally takes teams 2 to 4 days. We did it in a single push. I think we are just a little over 12 hours car to car. And so another lesson that I've learned from climbing and skiing mountains and building my career in this field is to be willing to walk away, no matter how much you've invested. One of my first high altitude trips was to go climb and ski in Peru. They have these beautiful high altitude glaciated mountains there that scale 21,000 feet. And it was a place that I had long dreamed of going. And so this was an opportunity for me to finally step into a leadership position in planning an expedition. And so I did months of research, weeks of planning and packing. And I really felt that Peru was going to be this turning point in my career, a defining point. And I also really felt this need to validate myself at this point in my career. I almost had like an addiction to risk. And that's something to definitely be mindful of, because like the brain chemistry that goes on with these high stress situations, we can find ourselves, it can be really addictive. And so being able to recognize that. So after a few days of travel, we arrived to Juarez, which is at 10,000 feet. And then we started our acclimatization. We did a hike up to Laguna Churup at 14,600 feet. And then it was time to set up base camp. And our goal was to go to the Ashinka Valley. And I had a few mountains on my list that I was really deeply committed to wanting to ski. Again, I was still building my career, and I was really fighting a sense of implicit bias because I'm 5'2", I weigh 115 pounds. When people look at me, they don't really think, wow, she looks like a really strong mountaineer. So I was like, I have to go to Peru and I have to climb these big mountains to prove myself to be taken seriously and validated as an athlete. So when we were getting into the Ashinka Valley, we had these wet, stormy conditions, and I wasn't getting the beta from other mountaineers that I had hoped for. These were not the conditions. We wanted to have like clear bluebird days, stable weather. It's kind of like wanting to invest in a company, but upon further investigation, it's not as good as it looks. And so my heart was set on skiing this mountain behind our tent, Toklaraju. It's one of the big mountains there. I wanted to get into the bigger mountains. So the weather, it was cloudy, it was hot, it was transitional. And so one of our first objectives, it was going to be sort of an acclimatization peak. It's called Ashinka. And as we got to the top, it was just some of the hottest, like the sun came out and the temperatures were extremely hot, and the mountains around us started to come alive with avalanches and icefall and rockfall. And it was not the kind of conditions that we wanted, that were confidence inspiring to go up an even bigger, more dangerous peak. But like, I can't explain to you how hot it can feel on a glacier, even though it like you're in the snow, just the reflection, it is just our skin, we were just like tearing off layers. We were so hot. And so we carefully skied back down. We actually skied rope together for part of it because we were worried about falling in a crevasse. And it was just me and my partner, just a small team of us. And so we had this long walk back to the tent. And when we got back to the tent, we had a really difficult conversation because I was dreaming to go up this mountain behind us, this big pyramid peak. And the conditions were clearly telling us no, but I had invested so much into this trip to prepare. And my partner said he did not want to go up there. He was my boyfriend. Now he's my husband. And I think sometimes I, I thought that leadership had to look a certain way. And I feel like I kind of internalized some of the norms of just being like a toxic leader, not listening and learning. And so I called him a really bad name at the tent, and I told him to grow a pair and to get out and like we're gonna go do this big mountain. And he stayed really committed to his stance on not wanting to climb that big mountain. And so it was incredibly painful to alter our plans to walk away from that big mountain. I had invested so much. But what I learned from this is to not let bad decisions spiral into a catastrophe. So, after we decided, so this was the mountain of my dreams, and we were there. We had taken so much time to get there, and we turned away. And after we decided not to go up this mountain because we had so many red flags, we still got to climb and ski two other 18 and 19,000 foot peaks in the area. And so plan B actually turned out not to be so bad. And when we got back into town, we heard about some really bad news that had happened on that mountain that we decided not to go up. So this was one of the plan B mountains that we got to climb and ski. It's called Pisco. So we got back to town and we learned that a team of 4 very experienced Estonian climbers had died on this mountain that we decided not to go up to. So it was, I guess, really validating to listen to my partner, to trust his intuition, to not being so committed to the outcome, especially when you've invested so much. Letting go was hard, but it was worth it. And I really learned in this experience to trust intuition and communication with partners. And when I returned, my coach at the time, he left me with this. He said, the mountains will always be there. You can always come back to them when you're better prepared, but not if you're dead. And so, yeah, it was in a high risk situation, you have to be willing to walk away when the conditions aren't right, even when you're all in and no matter how much you've invested. And so the last little lesson I have is that these high risk situations involve high stress. And we talk a lot about the physical factors. In mountaineering, it's rock fall, it's avalanches, it's ice fall, crevasses, but we often don't make the same plans for how to manage the psychological factors. And so what I'm really advocating is to learn how to navigate the human factor. So this past March, my big goal on skis was to try to do this challenge called Everesting, to climb up and ski down for 24 hours or until reaching 29,031 vertical feet, whichever comes first. So this was my big dream. And even though it doesn't have the same, I decided to do it at the ski resort. Brighton gave me special permission during the winter to do it there. So even though there wasn't the huge risk that big mountains presents, there's still the risk of falling, of fatigue, and the hazards that go with skiing for 24 hours. So I made a really detailed time plan, what time I would start and the amount of vert per hour and a nutrition plan. But I also made a plan for what would happen when I reach a psychological breakdown. Because when you're doing something so stressful, when your body is in a fight or flight state for so many hours, it's not a matter of if this breakdown will happen, It's a matter of when. And I think more and more, we're all feeling this really overwhelming stress from COVID. And so, really being open, honest, and transparent, communicating how we're feeling, and not letting ourselves, not like having a plan to address it before it spirals out of control. So, in my plan and my communication to my pacers and to my crew, I wrote a plan about how to manage these low moments that I knew were going to come. So, I had them, instead of asking me how I'm feeling, I told them to ask me, "Hey, you're feeling good, right?" Because it's a lot easier to say, "Yeah, I'm feeling good," than it is to think about all the aches and pains. And I it's these little things, just having my crew, instead of asking them what I want to eat, just offering me something. Because when you're in these kind of positions, you really have a lot of decision fatigue. And so having people who can just offer, when you're out for 24 hours burning so many calories, you're digging deep, you just need, it's what you eat isn't as important as just continuing to eat and drink. And so I started this 24-hour challenge at 6 p.m., climbing up the mountain with these special boots and skis and bindings and skins, and then skiing down. And I went all through a long, dark, cold night. And we had this nice tent at the bottom where the crew would quickly come back in and feed me. We had pizza and all sorts of snacks. Kind of made a little party out of it. And then I put my skis back on and climb back up, ski down, repeat over and over. All told, I did 18 laps climbing up and down the groomer at Brighton, the Great Western. If those of you have skied there, you might be familiar. And my partner kept track of the vert, kept it all very detailed. And having that companionship and having that plan, it really helped keep morale high and to keep the spirits high. And so by really because I've done like 12, 18-hour challenges before where I haven't had a plan, and you can end up going to a really dark place psychologically. But by putting it all out on the table before, that transparency piece, communicating it, I was really able to avoid like a full breakdown of tears. And it can just feel really overwhelming sometimes doing these endurance challenges, as I'm sure it feels for all these challenges we're doing right now in this crazy time with COVID. And so at the end of the day, I was able to achieve my goal, and I was able to climb and ski 31,000 vertical feet in 24 hours. It was a distance of 55 miles, all human powered. And I also was able to help raise over $10,000 for Utah Clean Energy. So to do the fundraiser on top of it was a really nice treat. And so I really think by putting it all out there, trusting the intuition, transparency, openness, communication, that we can really better manage risky decision making. So I'm super excited about an upcoming project I'm doing. In less than a month, I will be leaving to go climb and ski Mount Vinson, which is the highest peak in Antarctica. So I'll spend about 3 weeks on the ice with an average temperature of -20. And it's one of the most remote places in the world. I'm really excited for this upcoming adventure. And yeah, I'd love to keep in touch and to keep these conversations going. Thank you so much for letting me share some of my stories from the mountains. And I'd love to hear some questions that you all have. Thank you so much for tuning in. Or I would love to hear too, how many of you are skiers, or what kind of your adventures are your favorite? Okay, so we have a question from Joanne McDonald. How long do you think you will do this? So that is a great question. With ski mountaineering, one of the cool things with mountaineering in general and these endurance activities is that I see that people get better with age. And so when I went to climb Mount Everest, some of the other climbers on our team were in their 50s and 60s. So I don't necessarily like, I want to do this until I'm as old as possible. My dad is 90 and he still skis. And so I hope I can do this for a long time. And I'm sure that some of my goals will change in the style that I do them, but I want to set myself up so I can do this for a long time. And while I'm older, I can challenge these ideas about ageism too, to disrupt that, because I think the media representations about outdoor sports, they really associate that with youth. But I think that you can definitely have a long career climbing and skiing and mountaineering. So I hope to do it for the rest of my life. So we have a question from Erica, or no, Eric Hancock. What was your closest call? Oh, um, I have another keynote that I do, and so actually before Everest, I had a really bad crash right before I went 7 weeks, where I fell and I tore my ACL. So it was fully torn, and I was able to rehab my knee without surgery, go and climb Everest, and have surgery when I got home. So even though that fall wasn't it wasn't like a deadly fall, or I didn't have, besides my knee, I was okay. It was still really stressful and really scary because there was just a lot on the line with the Everest expedition going on. And Lisa, you have that in that video you'll send out. So if you want to see that fall and hear that story, that's in a short video that I think Lisa's going to email to everybody.
I'm going to send out an email. I'll follow up and we'll have a link to that video as well. But yes, make sure you ask your questions in the chat. And my question is, when you were skiing at Brighton, it looked like you were wearing jeans. Wearing jeans. Those were like those were ski pants, right?
Yeah, there are. So for ski, so there's backcountry skiing, which is more about the big picture. You know, it's like long days going through passes. Then there's ski mountaineering, where you're trying to ski like these narrow couloirs and steeper stuff, and maybe you're going into more glaciated environments. And then there's a discipline of ski called ski mo, which is like ski mountaineering racing. And it's actually going to be an Olympic event, I think in 2026. It just got approved. And so you put these little skis on and the spandex suit, and you race up the mountain as fast as you can. And so those pants are actually a very technical spandex that are just printed with denim. So it wasn't actually jeans, but yeah, they do look pretty stylish. It's kind of fun to wear them. Okay. Do you want to read the questions, Lisa?
I will tell you what, what discipline, well, there's a couple of good ones. What discipline of mountaineering took the longest to get used to? Ice climbing, alpine rock, etc. They're trying to do, it's from Marissa. She's trying to do more Pacific Northwest volcanoes in the future.
That's an awesome question. I mean, so alpine climbing, I spent a few years kind of really taking a deep dive into that and learning to place trad gear. And then ice climbing was like also really terrifying for me to get used to, because as a skier, you really don't like ice, you know, like we're always searching for fresh powder. So I think spending some time on both of those skills was really valuable. I don't do them as much anymore because one of my other strategies for managing risk is to just spend less amounts of time in these exposed alpine environments, because when you're out there, there's a certain amount of objective hazard that you just can't mitigate. And so I spend a lot of my time cross training now with trail running and doing like high intensity running and just trying to go lighter and faster. And so I'm spending less time alpine climbing and whatnot, because it's pretty dangerous. And placing gear, once you get the hang of it, and managing the rope work is relatively straightforward. The other thing about Pacific Northwest volcanoes and managing crevasses is that a lot of the techniques change depending on the size of your team and how deep the crevasses are that you could potentially fall into. And so I would definitely recommend like thinking through how many people you're going to be on the glacier with, and then making sure that whoever is skiing first, if you're skiing unroped, that they don't have the rope, like being conscientious of where the rope is with your team and not sending the first person down with the rope in their pack, because if they fall in, then you don't have a rope to haul them out with. So there's just a lot of subtleties, and it really comes down to the size of the team. Yes.
Another good one, and I don't know who it's from. I'm sure it's one of our friends, but they're asking about how do you get over that fear of falling and heights? How does one work through that? How do you deal with fear?
I'm terrified of heights, to be honest. And my mom is actually also terrified of heights and chairlifts. So I have a lot of anxiety about the things that I do. And I do think if you can harness that, it can be a really powerful asset. And so I guess one of the strategies for the fear of heights is just kind of desensitizing myself to it slowly. And so you don't like start out by doing the most extreme thing, like you kind of make baby steps and slowly get yourself more used to it. And the other thing that I'm finding with these COVID times that we're living in is that I just don't have the same ability to like go to those really scary places. And so I would also say the other part of dealing with those fears is self-compassion, because it's totally normal to have those fears. And there are times that we can take on more stress and we can face them and we can desensitize ourselves. But when we're already living in such a kind of high stressful situation with the global pandemic that we're still in, with so much uncertainty, like we can't pile on too much more stress and fear to that. And so having self-compassion and really pushing yourself just the right amount. You don't have to go too crazy with how much you add at once. I would really recommend baby steps. So maybe you start by going to the rock climbing gym. And if you are too scared to get to the top, then just going halfway and then slowly building up, and not pushing yourself too much. Because when we try to overcome it all at once, we can risk like flooding and becoming just emotionally overwhelmed. And so you don't really want to get to that point, because it's not, you got to just little steps, make a progression, make a ladder and do it one rung at a time.
Yeah, so it was Mandy, our friend Mandy Thompson. Had asked that. It's a good question. My friend Suyanka, who is the one that's from Nepal, which I didn't know. That's so cool.
Cool.
She's asking, what is your morning routine?
That is a great question. Well, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about adding more running into my training is that when my schedule gets really busy, because even though like my career as an outdoor athlete, I still have tons of office time that I have to do, and like editing and writing, and there's a lot of time on my computer. And so I really like to start my day with either a run or some yoga, some movement, because when I prioritize myself and I prioritize getting my workout in, even if it's just 45 minutes or if it's a short one, it gives me a sense of confidence to go through the rest of the day. So I usually try to have like a quick bite to eat. I'm really good at like eating first thing in the morning because I'm usually really hungry. Staying fueled helps with my training. And then either going for a run or doing some yoga or Pilates or just some kind of movement really helps to make sure that I've taken care of my own needs for the day, and then I can be of better service to others. But I have to say that as much as I like to, have the movement first thing in the morning, like every day is a little bit different depending on where my workout is or what my plans are. And so it can be a little bit chaotic. It's not, yeah.
Oh, so our ski patrol friend is asking, it's long, so I'm just going to read it. It says, "Hi, Caroline, I would like to share my perspective as a ski patroller and ask you a question. On mitigation mornings, we are exposed to extreme risk while handling explosives with a time constraint to open a ski area. We often feel the pressure, which may affect decision making. What is your experience or opinion with risk regarding avalanche mitigation occupations, specifically with ski patrols or Department of Transportation? Thank you so much, and I hope you have a fun and safe trip to Antarctica."
That is a great question. I think like I have a lot of respect. Thank you very much for all the work that all of you are doing to keep public safe. And um that is a really good question because there's the pressure to get the resort open, like that powder fever is it really can lead people to, I mean, it's a huge, it's like one of the definite red flags that we see is like powder fever. And when you have like a lot of money too on the line to get the resort open or to get the roads open, to get people up there, I would say though, while you feel that pressure, I would also say to also think about, to go back to that first little story about visualizing the worst case scenario, because the public might not be happy, but if you have to delay an opening, if you need more time, don't be afraid to advocate for it. Because I think what would be worse is to have an accident where people are buried in bounds, or even worse, a fatality. And so while that pressure can feel overwhelming, try to take a deep breath and realize that you have many options. Like the mountains will be there, people can wait, and they can ski them later as long as they're not dead and as long as you're not dead or injured. And so even though it can feel like we don't have options, we always do. And there's always a way to, you can always delay things, you can always postpone the opening, and to really make sure that you speak up if you don't feel safe. Because often you see in these situations, someone had an inclination, but they didn't express it. And so even though it might feel unpopular or it might feel really hard to make sure that you're speaking up, and no matter of your rank or seniority in your position. So I hope that is helpful. Yeah. And I think too, sometimes with skiing, it's like that anticipation, waiting for the rope to drop, or, oh, this line isn't open today, but you can come back tomorrow. I think that's all part of the allure of skiing. I mean, snow is one of those elements in life that's always changing. And so if you can work with the ski patrol to communicate that to the public, like, hey, we're postponing this because we didn't have time to do it, I think it can make, once you get that line, once it opens, it can make the feeling of success that much sweeter after having some delay. Or so I hope that helps answer your question, and thank you so much for asking it.
That's a good question. Okay, there's no more, so I'm just going to ask one more if I don't see any more. But I wanted to just kind of go back to what you were talking about with having a plan, for kind of a mental plan, and as long with the physical, right? Like our jobs, we all have like these emergency response plans, and we have to know what we're going to do. But I don't think we detail it out as the mental side, right? So maybe could you tell us a little bit more about where you came up with that and how we can kind of start to try to do that when we're so focused on, just wear your PPE, or, those types of things?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's something that I've only recently started to incorporate into some of my communications and like formal written plans about endurance goals. And it came to me after I ran last fall my first 50-mile distance. As I got to like mile 37, I had a lot of pain in my foot, and I just mentally felt so defeated. And to try to keep going, it felt impossible. And I was just so slow those last 13 miles that mentally, like, I just sort of had like a psychological breakdown. I felt like I couldn't do it. I felt like such a failure. And when you're attempting these big things that we're all doing, whether it's an ultra marathon, or whether it's like a lot of these jobs we're in right now, even if they're not an ultra marathon, they feel like an ultra marathon. Like life right now is an endurance event, you know? So I think to get really specific on your own personal, like, what does a breakdown look like for you, and what are some tools to help either like avoid getting into that, or like what are the things you'd want your team to say to you to avoid getting to that dark place, or if you're in that dark place, like what are the right things to say, and kind of like writing those out in the third person for me helped to advocate for myself and putting that into a document. And so I'm going to show you, it was this book that helped me kind of come up with this. It's mental training for ultra running. But if you plan to run in the toughest endurance races, you need to prepare your body. But how do you psych yourself up to withstand the tremendous mental pressure that could mean the difference between crossing the finish line and a DNF? And so I worked a bit with this therapist, with Addie Bracy, and she helped me kind of come up with this plan. And it's something that more and more I'm going to be incorporating into my work, because it's just something I think, especially now more than ever, we're all going through. And so unfortunately, like sometimes you do have to kind of like, you hit the rock bottom or get to the verge of burnout. But then once you've gone there, like you can see the warning signs before and avoid going to that place again. And so we really want people to be able to advocate like for themselves and for that psychological support, so that we don't hit those rock bottom, like the burnout and the fatigue and just all of those things.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We were so excited to have you come and hear about some of your experiences, and it's exciting. We're excited. I want to hear how December goes. So we'll be watching social media and trying to keep our eyes peeled to hear about that. But thank you. We appreciate you coming. And
thank you all so much for having me. It's such an honor to share some of these stories, and definitely please keep in touch.
great, thank you. Well, Caroline is done with her portion. I'm going to just quickly let everyone know just what is coming up kind of over the next little bit, and then we will be done. But like Caroline had mentioned before, I'm going to share a wrap-up email, and I will include the video that she was talking about. And then if anybody, I'll include that information that she had on her last slide, just contact information or whatever. But if you have any questions or anything for her, feel free to let me know, and I can pass those on or whatever. But we'll definitely communicate with you guys and give you some more information to follow up. Okay, so quickly, what I wanted to share. So the next Women in Safety, we kind of already talked about that, went through where that was, but I did want to say thank you to the Utah Labor Commission. Just mentioned Utah State Women in Safety is part of Utah Safety Council. It's funded by Utah Safety Council and the Utah Labor Commission. So we very much appreciate that. So what is coming up next? We have our Utah Safety Conference and Expo, March 30th and 31st. And so kind of our tradition is to have a Women in Safety. We've done a reception, usually that first, after that first conference day, kind of late afternoon, evening on the first conference day. We are still going to do that. So the next Women in Safety event in the spring will be that one at the Utah Safety Conference and Expo. So those are the dates, and that will be March 30th. But the one that's coming up sooner is December 15th. So it seems like far away, but it's actually coming closer. It's getting sooner and sooner. It's happening. But December 15th, we're going to be up at Red Butte Gardens in the Orangerie. It's really lovely up there and nice. We wanted to kind of be outside, but not be outside. So this is our first in-person event for Women in Safety that we've had since the pandemic started. So we're really excited about it. On that wrap-up email, I will include a link with some more information, how you can register to attend that. But it will be, like I mentioned, at the Red Butte Gardens at the Orangerie. The picture I have here is our friend Kristen Schultz did when she won the Wish Award back in 2019. That was just in December of 2019. And then that's Joy Glad with her on the right and John Wojciechowski, our president, on the left. So Joy helps out on Women in Safety Steering Committee. Kristen was our Wish Award winner in 2019, and then John is our Utah Safety Council president. So I like that picture. And then we will be hearing from Patricia Jones, or Pat Jones. He was the co-founder and former president of Dance Associate. She was also a senator, serving the Utah legislature for 14 years. And now she is the CEO
Are we leaving right now?
Women's Leadership Institute
Yeah. Okay.
at the University of Utah. So she is amazing. She has recommended, I think, like all of the speakers that we've had. Her organization is awesome, and I'm so excited to hear from her. So we will be presenting that Wish Award on December 15th, and we hope that you will register and join us in person then. So once again, I just want to say thanks to Caroline, thanks to my team, Utah Safety Council. Everybody just kind of helps out around here, and I just appreciate that. And then also thanks to the Utah Labor Commission for allowing us to have a great organization like Women in Safety so that we can support each other and learn new things and be a good community. So hope to see you in December. Thanks again, everyone. And I will get that email out to you within the next day or so. Have a good one.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.